Hey everyone, I'm Pete Preston.
And I'm Kate. Lovely to see you all again.
Thanks for coming back and thank you for joining us on Marketplace Growth by Accoil. So the topic for today, as you probably see in the video title, is increasing support volume as a way of connecting with more of your customers. When we look at support, we absolutely believe that it should be there to help your customers, but that's not the only reason for it to be there. It's not just about solving problems, and you can expand on how you use support. Maybe not everyone wants to increase support volume. And we talked about this before we started recording that, if you've got an app that just sells and is self-serve and you've got it running nice and smoothly and you don't necessarily want support tickets, you don't feel like you need to talk to customers, maybe this isn't for you. But if you've ever thought to yourself, boy, I'd really like to talk to more customers, this is what we're talking about. All right.
Absolutely. For any of those build and they will come people out there and you've got crickets, this is what you've got to start doing.
More support ticket. Yes. There's a lot of value to get from engaging with customers, right? So if you already understand the need to do that and have a strong urge to talk to customers, do that. I think it's something that none of us do as much of as we should. And I've had that experience pretty much everywhere that I've worked, every team that I've worked with and alongside. Could we have talked to customers more? Absolutely. So this is just one way of doing that. But as a marketplace business, this is one of the channels that you actually have a lot more control over. And that is getting customers to support. Why should marketplace partners increase support ticket volume?
In being in the marketplace, it's a maths game. You need to get a certain number of valuation and then you need to then convert. And if you understand how and when they convert, you get a number, and then it just means you've got to get a certain number of evaluations, get the conversions, and Bob's your uncle, you will get the sales and you will get your revenue. So with that framework in mind, step back and go, support can actively help in that evaluation period. And we used to see it all the time at ThinkTilt. And we used to be very quick to jump on questions where a person was an evaluator. And of course, we had tire kickers. So I don't want to Pollyanna this and say, oh, God, this is all perfect. We had people that would never stop talking to us. It was like, oh, my God, they're back again, But there were others who were literally in the consideration. They read the documentation. They had a couple of queries. And then, bam, you would be able to respond to them. And you would also then do other things like, tell me what use cases you are doing and then be able to cross-reference them to your documentation. Or where are you at in the procurement? If you're looking to procure, here's your convince your boss template that you potentially can use. So you're always able to cross-sell to stuff. And we used to get such good feedback from people saying, you've really helped me make this buying process much easier. So for my money, it's all about building value and reducing friction, and support can just let you do that. And then when you talk about your roadmaps and your feature stuff, oh my goodness, you just went back to all the customers, the good and the bad, the happy, the unhappy. And then, oh my God, did you get richer data? And you got people telling you really what they thought as opposed to what they thought you want to hear. So that was the other big reason. And for me, it just by doing support, it just actually makes you real and it stands out. But I'm not going to Pollyanna this by saying if you're being swamped and you actually can't support everybody, that's not what I'm advocating. Is you actually learn to understand what's a good ticket and what's a ticket that you don't want to see again. And so maybe we can talk a little bit about support design. Because us wasn't just about increasing volume, it was increasing the right volume.
Yep. Walk us through that. Like go into that design a bit more and how, what was the triage like?
Reading what people were saying was really, really important. And so we used to pipe it into Slack so we could all see the customer queries coming in each day, right? So we could all see it. It was also a good way of actually getting help when you needed it. And so by doing that, what it also had sparked, so I used to lead the support team. And so we ran 24/5, so day to day. And then 24 hours a day, 5 days a week. And then we would, for urgent, we'd be 24/7. So it meant we had 3 shifts working. 3 to 4 shifts, depending on what we were doing. And so what was really important was when stuff came in overnight, we would actually spend some time seeing what came in and whether we could actually short circuit, i.e. do a response so that it sped up everyone's time. And where we could, we would make those responses public. So we had documentation that was constantly being updated. We also did pages where we actually file noted particular problems and how they were solved, so that it meant that the whole team knew what was happening. And again, it's speeding it up. So this is why I'm talking about the right support queries, because then you hopefully cut out all of the stuff that's actually not going to get you anywhere. So you just wanted to make sure that evals were really critical. And then also we used to look to see when people were renewing. And so we used to track to see, are we going to have problems? Are we likely to lose these people? And your support can give you some insights on that.
Yeah. So a few things I'll just add to that. So having done support for ProForma, having that page, it was almost like an internal FAQ, I guess you could call it, that we didn't publish it, but it had, I don't know how many answers to pretty, not necessarily even common questions, but maybe some sticky questions or some difficult to answer questions that we could go to internally as, when we're doing support, and not entirely copy paste, but you got the bulk of your answer there that we could help with pretty quickly. And then feeding out to the public FAQ was another thing that was incredibly helpful to deflect or just make it easier for people to answer their own questions. Something that stands out to me is that having had a lot of conversations with marketplace partners and kind of talking about this exact thing, have you started leaning on support more to talk to customers? And you get the response of like, I don't really want to ask that. I don't feel like that's the place. And there's almost this fear of going beyond the initial request, right? If someone writes in with a question that they're confused by how to make something happen in a product, how do I work in whether your use case is or anything like that? And I think what ThinkTilt did a really good job of was just being human about it and asking the question and not being afraid to ask the question, kind of just reading the ticket, getting a vibe from the ticket. Is this a good time to ask? If not, don't, but otherwise, why not? And I can't think of one example where anybody got upset with us for asking those kind of questions.
Oh, sometimes the person said, for God's sake, just solve the problem rather than asking about that too. We had the odd one, and which is to be expected, but that's kind of light. And I think it's not being afraid of negativity, really. Sometimes it's hard when you're on support. You get it all the time and you go, oh my God, am I only seeing the negative bits of the world? But hopefully you can turn that. And it was also fantastic, wasn't it, Pete? Because remember, we could just get people to write reviews, We would have helped them solve a problem and we'd go, would you mind doing a review? And you'd get them right at that moment and they'd go, oh my God, you've done so much for us for sorting out. Because we used to be mission critical. So if we weren't working, we would stop an organization, which really you had to be very mindful of that. So, but God, we used to get some good reviews, didn't we?
We did.
We used to get some very good reviews.
And I think that might be a nice little secret benefit of doing this, is that if you do go to the marketplace and you look at apps with a lot of reviews, if a company provides good support, they get reviews just because of that. Even, the number of reviews I've read over the years that don't even mention it. Nice product, great support team, that says a lot. And really, if you're talking about selling to enterprise and building up that trust and those kind of signals, I can't think of anything better than someone else saying, yep, we didn't quite understand how to do this with the product. We got in touch with the support, problem solved, done. We're happy customers again. Like that to me is about as good as it gets for social proof wise. So nice little added benefit.
And you change your documentation so that then they do understand what you're trying to do. Yeah. So that's the other signal, is if someone keeps saying, I don't understand what you mean by this, it means you need to change your documentation.
And I think there's a good feedback loop with product there as well, right? Where you got that understanding. And this is like a recurring theme in our conversations that, it all comes back to who's using it and how are they using it, and understanding those use cases. And that just feeds across the entire company to really understand what your product is doing for people. want to talk real quick about how there's almost like a mindset shift that has to happen to changing how you look at support. And support is often seen as a cost center. What we found at ThinkTilt is that we could actually turn it into a sort of revenue generating system for us. You mentioned before, if you're paying attention to your evals and you're engaging with those evaluators as they send tickets in and just understanding who they are when they do send a support ticket. I think that was a big mental shift for the company to move from transactional support to really support is sales, right? Could you share your thoughts on that? Like, why is that an important way to look at support?
I'm hardwired to trying to help people. That's just my default. So again, I caveat this with saying if you're a product that, you're just going to get swamped and you can't service, then of course you've got to do this differently. But for all of the others who are still building their businesses, this is an absolute sure cracker way. So in terms of with the costings and things, and as a founder, you used to have to sign off on budgets, etc. But it was very, very easy to work out your cost per sale with your support because you literally had the tickets there in evaluation and then you had the sale. So it was actually very, very easy to see the effect that you actually had. And the funniest ones were people who you were answering support from, like, you thought, oh God, these people are not, like they've got the 10 user license and you're going, oh. And then sure enough, bam, they'd come back in a big enterprise license because they've been trialing you. They've been testing you, seeing, and holy moly. And you'd have these lovely subscriptions turn up on your transaction report. And you go, where the hell did they come from? So, and then with a bit of digging, you'd go, holy hell, it was, back at that small user, test trial thing. So you've got to be really careful when you get your nondescript emails because you just don't know who they are. Just don't know who they are. So it was a real hoot. But it's very easy to actually calculate your cost. Very easy to actually go, if we change the way we think about this, cost benefit, it's one of the easiest ways to actually test and measure this out. Far easier than some of your marketing spend, doing your cost per spend. Far easier. Far easier. Far easier. And if you don't have a salesperson or you have your salesperson who's also doing support, you can just put it all in together and that gives you, and I know that's not strictly correct, but 80-20 is my motto. You're never going to get perfect when you work in this world, in this marketplace. You're not going to get perfect. You're going to get incomplete information, inaccurate. You're going to get part stuff and you just have to make the best of it and make your punch.
I'll follow up on there and just reiterate that, if support is sales, that doesn't mean to treat it like a purely sales channel, but I think it's important to get your support team or whoever is on support sort of trained up on the ways that you can introduce other products into the conversation or ask about, go beyond the problem or the hurdle that the customer initially contacted you about. And just giving teams like the tools to do that and helping them understand when should I ask these questions and maybe when should I not ask these questions is really helpful.
So when I talked before about every morning or every couple of days looking at what's coming through the queue, most important is actually it's the feedback back to your team. So when I had, for example, a support person overseas, and sometimes if there was the way it was framed, you would actually give the feedback and say, maybe this is a way of how to write that or frame that, or don't do that. So feedback loop amongst yourselves is also critical. Yeah.
You don't train everyone one day and everyone's doing it perfectly. I think we can all get better. And I mentioned it several times already that, if support volumes are almost unbearable as it is, sometimes your answers are going to be short because you just need to move on. And that's just, the nature of the beast. So we can always be improving. Absolutely. One thing we haven't talked about, so I've said, increase support volume, but how do you actually go about doing that? So a few ways that we did it back at ThinkTilt was to actually just put links into emails, or we used Beamer as one product in app to communicate product changes, but also just encourage people from there to, question about the product, question about a use case, anything like that. So wherever we could kind of get in front of our customers, we were just not shoving support in their face, but just making it an option for them in those sort of touch points where it made sense. So we just took advantage of little ways in and around the product and the communications that we had to suggest to them that we were there to answer questions. It didn't have to be, it didn't have to be a bug. It didn't have to be an outage or any sort of complaint. It could just be a question about, am I doing this right? I remember we had a lot of phone calls with customers just around, I think you were the one that was primarily doing this, Kate, just helping them build forms, really. Like you'd get on a call and just walk me through this. And I remember sitting and sort of watching over your shoulder several times, and just, that's what these calls would turn into. And once you do that for someone and you see they get the product, you've helped them out, and you've got an advocate for life at that point with those customers. And it wouldn't have happened if they hadn't come through support.
And you've got to design your support stuff well. Like you don't just have open-ended questions everywhere, because that's just a pathway to hell. So we use forms and classification, which is probably another video, probably another whole video on this, but it's a pathway to hell if you don't design your request types well. Pathway to hell. Yeah.
That's our sales pitch for increasing your support volume. You can grow your business if you grow your support volume. Again, if you are a small team that perhaps just doesn't have the time to do it, I totally understand that. This isn't, we're not saying that everyone should do this all the time, but it is a great way of getting in touch with your customers when, we all know through the marketplace, it can be really difficult because billing contact and technical contacts aren't always the ones that are actually using your products and often ignore the emails, don't they? So, Kate, any closing thoughts for people who might be considering actually following our advice on this one?
I think the only thing I could say is you can scope and manage this. You can scope and manage it, and you don't have to go in thinking, oh, holy hell. So you can do this in stages and level yourself up.
Hey guys, if you like that video, hit subscribe. Help us build a catalog of amazing marketplace partner content you're not going to find anywhere else. We publish one of these every single week. And if you prefer to read about this content instead of watching these videos, head over to accoil.co and sign up for the newsletter today. See ya.